Look at this beauty. Hand painted by my brother-in-law. This is a Kit Ukulele, now hanging from my ceiling. It's not a great player. I didn't do extensive setup on it. I just left the original parts and decided to keep it as artwork. I did 6 of these, and it brings me to my discussion today, which is around the question, should you? There's a nice painting by a friend of mine who painted that while listening to my music, which was about the best compliment you can make. But anyway, let me set you down here and get in front of the camera for you. Hello. So up there is my ukulele, Kit Ukulele, and that's basically the thing I wanted to talk about. Should you buy kit guitars, ukuleles, mandolins, electric guitars, acoustic guitars, violins? There are various sellers, particularly on eBay, Reverb probably, other places, AliExpress, Alibaba, even StuMac occasionally sells them, and then other independent vendors that just do kit guitars and ukuleles. And the price range is incredible. I've seen the ukuleles as cheap as $25 and as much as $125 for a ukulele. I would say, and I've done a few kits over the years, I would say that I would only do a kit or buy a kit if you have some inclination with tools and doing woodwork and finish work. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it is true that these kits don't require a lot of carpentry skills. However, in almost all situations, even with the more expensive kits, I have found that you have to do significantly more than what's on the instruction sheet. I have found that the joinery of parts isn't always clean. Sometimes you have to do some extra sanding, sometimes refitting. Sometimes neck angles are wrong, so you have to do remove some material or add a shim. Sometimes there are rough spots. Some of these kits are only rudimentarily sanded and require more sanding if you wish to finish them. I know a lot of people keep them raw. I've seen a lot of people do the kits on the electric guitars, for instance, and just put a very simple finish on it. You know, like an oil rub or you know, tongue oil or Danish oil, whatever that stuff is. And it works okay, but normally you have to do a bit more sanding than you might think to get it to look good. So the kits also tend to come, which is why this one's hanging on the wall. I could part it up and do a you know, make a good playing uke out of it. But I've decided to just display it. It's a conversation piece. I didn't pay much for it, and it's painted by a family member, so it's become a piece of artwork, which I don't like to do with instruments in general, but this one's an exception. The parts that come on these things, as on the ukulele I showed you at the beginning of this video, tend to be poor. The bridge is not the proper hardwood. It's not a rosewood or an ebony bridge. It's in a lot of cases it's too soft of a wood, or it's you know, a mystery wood painted black to make it look like ebony, which is sort of one of the rotten tricks of the trade, I find, with particularly with violin makers, but it extends to the plucked instruments as well. And of course the nuts, the saddle are usually plastic. The strings are usually the worst kind of strings you can possibly buy, or even they don't even sell them. They're just bulk acquired by factories and just slammed on these instruments because they cost a few pennies each. So you almost always need to buy or upgrade parts on these. Those of you who have done a kit can attest to this stuff. They don't normally go together as cleanly as intended and as written in the instructions, and they don't normally include top-notch parts. Another thing that I found with kits is that there are various people selling them finished and sort of applying their own logos. So they've sort of created their own OEM system. Now, sometimes this is in-house, sometimes this is independent. And I don't want to name any names because I don't have any proof, but I suspect there are at least two relatively big eBay sellers that sell a lot of kits but also sell finished ukuleles and guitars. And I suspect, from what I've seen in looking at these instruments, that they finish some of these kits and sell them as finished. And there are also a couple of sellers that I think, I'm not sure, are buying kits at certain prices, slamming them together. Sometimes some of them are better at it than others, some are quite poor, and doing some kind of semi-factory finish. I found this quite a bit in the ukulele world. I can't prove it, but I suspect there are a couple of sellers that are buying kit ukuleles. They found a way to put on a very rudimentary logo, usually some simple graphic, whether it's a sticker or a paint job, and then they do some kind of finish over the top. That is, one way of setting up your own brand. Of course, there are a lot of other ways to do it, and you can do it through Alibaba. Buy 50 ukuleles and have them put your brand on it if you send them a JPEG of a certain pixel ratio. So the sort of DIY ethic in the instrument business is running high, healthy these days, and I'm seeing a lot of applications for kits. I've actually talked to ukulele teachers, guitar teachers that buy the kits, put them together, and then sell them at double the cost to their students as sort of an entry-level guitar. One good thing, if they have the skill, is they can control the setup. They can set them up how they think they should be set up, action-wise, string choice-wise. But I've found that sometimes these things are overpriced. Even some of the kits in the raw or in the rude can be overpriced. This is particularly so in the violin world. I've done a number of violin kits, and some of them are as expensive as just buying a new student violin, and the woods, the craftsmanship and the parts don't merit the same cost. So you've got to be really careful in the world of instrument kits. I think there are some good kits out there, and I think there are some fairly poorly parted kits with second-rate wood that are out there too, and the pricing seems to be all over the place. What I'd like you to do is, since I've got a small coterie of people that tend to reply fairly often to these videos, and I'm very grateful, perhaps you can relay your experience. What is your experience? What has your experience been with putting kits together for violins, guitars, ukuleles, even mandolins, or spoke instruments? I've seen them for dulcimers and other things as well. And where might people acquire a better quality kit, and what are the ones to avoid in your opinion? It'd be nice to start a conversation. So that's my thing for today. I just noticed my ukulele hanging up there, and I thought to make a topic of it. Every once in a while, I don't do it too often, I dip into the world of kits and putting them together, and when I see something new and interesting looking, and I often jump out of it relatively quickly after doing one or two, realizing that the amount of work and materials and time, given that I have to basically refinish a lot of the wood parts and do a lot of sanding, it just doesn't make it worthwhile unless you're doing them to keep and play. If you're doing them for resale, I don't see a lot of margin there. So let me know what your experience is, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.